It is my duty to inform the House that the Speaker is unavoidably absent. Therefore, in accordance with the statutes, I would ask the Deputy Speaker to please take the chair.
O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty and accomplish it perfectly, for the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oyate, Denusule, Wehethowug nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Please be seated. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Routine proceedings. Is the honourable member for Transcona standing to be recognized or just standing before he sits? Okay. I just wanted to check. Routine proceedings, introduction of bills. Committee reports. We don't have any. Tabling of reports. Ministerial statements. All right. Members' statements. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased to rise in the House today to recognize two Southdale constituency members from Windsor Park. Rich and Therese Houston are two pillars in our community and have joined us in the gallery today. For 15 years, the Houstons could be found at Vincent Massey Park preparing and setting off firework displays watched by the entire neighborhood every single Canada Day. The COVID-19 pandemic almost put an end to their decade-and-a-half-long streak, but this year, Rich and Therese continued making a spectacle in the sky with their fireworks, much to the pleasure of the entire community. I was honored, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to help them put on a great show. Their good deeds don't end at fireworks. Rich and Therese are also very active with Winnipeg Harvest and their Tin for the Bin program. Out of the goodness of their heart and compassion for others, they have provided loads of food for the homeless and the less fortunate during the holiday season. Rich and Therese can also be seen volunteering at Windsor Park Community Centre at youth sporting events and at the annual Winter Carnival. Many people remarked how wonderful it was to see them in person. I can tell you they've radiated vibrant energy, whether it be fireworks, organizing food drives, or just volunteering at a baseball game. You can be sure the Houstons will be there with a smile and a determination to make Windsor Park the best it can be. Rich and Therese Houston, on behalf of the entire Southdale constituency and the Manitoba Legislature, we thank you for all that you do.
The honourable member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. 40 years ago, two groups of Wolseley citizens were brought together by a common goal to increase opportunities for community building, recreation, and childcare in their neighborhood. They spent 10 years dreaming and planning for the development of the Robert A. Steen Community Centre at 980 Palmerston Avenue, which opened on October 24, 1992, 30 years ago. The two groups, the Laura Secord Sports and Recreation Association and the Laura Secord Home and School Parent-Teacher Association, accomplished many things in a short time span, including securing community club status and creating a community club facility with a gym, office, canteen, and meeting rooms, establishing a childcare facility, installing a wading pool, building a community plaza for events with shaded outdoor seating, securing a street closure and safe passageway between the school field and the community club, replanting the Wolseley elm, achieving heritage status for Laura Secord School, saving it from being torn down, building the first play structure on Laura Secord School grounds, and the development of the Nellie McClung Park at the corner of Wolseley Avenue and Lenore Street. 3 decades later, new community members continue to enjoy the centre, take on leadership roles, coaching or serving on the board, and continue to carry out the vision of those first committee members. RA Steen now has a catchment area that extends all the way east through West Broadway and downtown to Main Street. The centre continues to house the Laura Secord childcare program and now one of the Gordon Bell off-campus classrooms. From the beloved annual Winter Carnival to the twice-weekly farmers markets, summer camps, recreational programs for all ages, and craft shows featuring local makers, the centre remains an integral part of the Wolseley constituency. Please join me in congratulating my guests in the gallery on the 30th anniversary of Robert A. Steen Community Centre.
The honourable member for Dauphin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This August, I was honored to attend commemoration ceremonies that told the stories of air schools which operated during World War II in my constituency of Dauphin. The chairperson, Al Gray, spearheaded a series of events and the erection of several memorials to recognize the contributions of the No. 10 Service Flying Training School and the No. 7 Bombing and Gunnery School, as well as the over 9,000 airmen that trained at our air schools from 1941 to 1945. A commemorative service and memorial dedication was held on August 27th at Riverside Cemetery in the Veterans section, honoring 49 Commonwealth airmen who died while in service to their countries, and 15 of them who were laid to rest in Dauphin. A ceremony later that same day was held at the Lieutenant Colonel William G. Barker VC Airport south of Dauphin. 2 monuments were unveiled at the airport giving the history of the Commonwealth Air Training Plan and listing the 29 airmen killed in service at Dauphin's Service Flight Training School and the 20 airmen who were killed at the Bomber and Gunnery School near Paulson. Together, these 2 schools trained 9,000 out of 131,000 airmen trained as part of the entire project, which was a significant and notable World War II effort. This formal memorial was attended by notable high or special guests, including representatives from the British High Commission. A low-level flyover was provided courtesy of the Commonwealth Air Training Plan Museum in Brandon, which featured the Harvard, Tiger Moth, and Cornell aircraft. I express my gratitude here today to Al Gray and all the committee's work and who contributed significantly to our local economy, the Canada's war effort.
Member's time has expired. Leave has been granted.
Thank you. And ultimately to the Allied victory of World War II. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kiwatanuk.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise today to share a few words about Elder Charlie Bittrin. Charlie is a residential school survivor. In his life, he's a thriver, a role model, and a truly respected elder that shares his gifts, knowledge, and life experiences, in the hopes that Indigenous people can proceed along a path of health, healing, and prosperity in the true spirit of truth and reconciliation. Born and raised in Barons River, at the age of 7, Charlie attended day school at the Barons River United Church School. When he was 9 years old, he was diagnosed with polio. His family was told by doctors that he was going to be confined to either braces or a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Doctors were shocked that Charlie then made a full recovery, and he soon found that he was gifted with the ability to run. At the age of 15, Charlie was moved to the Birtle Residential School. While there are many painful memories that Charlie has shared during his time there, a few of Charlie's lived experiences stay with me the most. To quote Charlie, quote, "If you were doing something wrong, you were whipped. You weren't strapped, you were whipped. There's a difference," end quote. Charlie was gifted with the ability to run, and that ability was exploited by the administration of the residential school. Because of Charlie's speed and endurance, he was used by the principal to chase down runaway students who were then forced to return to the school. One of Charlie's experiences at residential school has been shared in his documentary, Bimibatuit, Where I Ran. In there, Charlie shares a day he was disciplined for horseplay on a trip with the school principal in 1967. Charlie was thrown out of the car in a snowstorm and forced to run out in front of the car along the highway, forced to run from around 7 in the evening until 2 or 3 in the morning. Charlie battled a snow blizzard and howling winds along the highway. It was only when Charlie finally collapsed and the principal struck him with the car was Charlie finally allowed to stop. His leg bleeding, he was finally allowed back into the car. It was only then that Charlie realized that his run in the blizzard along the highway lasted 80 kilometers in the dead of night. In closing, I encourage all members to watch the Charlie Bittern documentary, Bimibatuit, Where I Ran. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm honored to have Charlie and his family and his community leadership of Barons River First Nation join us here today. While there is so much more I wish to share about Charlie's life, my time here is short, so I'll end with this.
Members' time has leave has been granted.
All survivors of residential school, as I stand here in my traditional clothing in a place we were never meant to stand, I acknowledge and honor your perseverance, your determination, and your will. For it is because of your strength of spirit that our legacy as Anishinaabe people will continue for generations to come. Miigwech, Charlie, for allowing me the opportunity to share some of your life experience. Miigwech.
The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Today I rise to recognize the accomplishments of an individual who has greatly improved the lives of the students in the St. James Assiniboia School Division. As a school trustee since 1988, Bruce Chegas contributed 34 years to the school division, making him one of the longest-serving trustees in the division and in the province of Manitoba. Bruce believes that in order to ensure quality education, the school division must support literacy initiatives and numeracy enhancements, particularly in early years. Bruce is most proud of the school division's innovative learning programming, particularly the remote learning, which he played an active role in initiating. The St. James Assiniboia School Division was the first to introduce remote learning to ensure students could continue their educations. This program facilitated education for all students, including athletes playing out of province and students with disabilities. It's no surprise, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that Bruce earned the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2012. Bruce has had many responsibilities, including acting as the chair of the school board for 8 years, as well as numerous committee responsibilities. It was my honor to serve the school board with Bruce Chegas. I would like to direct your attention to the gallery where Mr. Chegas has joined us today with his wife Patricia, as well as his sister Rhonda and brother-in-law Clive. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I ask that we rise to recognize and thank Mr. Bruce Chegas for his service to his community, as well as the province of Manitoba.
Prior to oral questions, I wish to draw attention to all members to the galleries, where we have with us today Joel Fingard and Regine, I hope I'm saying this right, Janito, from the Robert A. Steen Community Center, and Myrna Phillips, who was the former MLA for Wolseley and the Speaker of the House. These are the guests for the Honourable Member for Wolseley. On behalf of all Honourable Members, we welcome you here today, and if you could just identify yourselves so we know who we're talking about. Welcome here. I also want to acknowledge we have seated in the public gallery from the Katimavik student group 9 students under the direction of Shay Malekna. Welcome to the Manitoba Legislature. Is that you guys up there? Well, welcome. Hope you have a great time this morning. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the shrinking number of PCs standing for re-election know that they've done a terrible job when it comes to potholes and when it comes to snow clearing and highway maintenance. New data show us just how terrible this situation has become.
Order.
Since 2016, under their watch, they've sold off more than 300 pieces of heavy equipment. Wow. That heavy equipment is supposed to clear roads. It's supposed to help us maintain and repair and build roads right across this province. So when we have a year of record potholes, as we've seen under this PC government, we know it's their cuts and sales of heavy equipment that is to blame. Will the Premier stop selling off our heavy equipment?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and certainly we are delivering for Manitobans, and we're delivering on infrastructure for Manitobans. We have got a 3-year budget for highways alone of over $500 million in each of the next 3 years, way more than anything the NDP ever committed to infrastructure here in Manitoba. Mr. Deputy Speaker, record investments in terms of equipment going into infrastructure here in Manitoba as well. We've committed to a 3-year funding agreement that gives certainty for companies that want to bid on projects. Mr. Deputy Speaker, under the NDP, it was different. It was rain, and then parade on election year. We are doing things different here, and our government is delivering services for Manitobans.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Well, I think the minister hit a pothole on the way into the legislature this morning, and the facts must have fallen out of his vehicle. Because the truth of the matter is, when they took office, there were more than 2,200 pieces of heavy equipment in the provincial inventory. But these documents, which I'll table for the minister to review as he drives over potholes on the way home, show that this year there are barely 1,900 pieces of heavy equipment left. They're selling everything off. They've already sold off 300 pieces of heavy equipment. How many more pieces of heavy equipment are they going to sell off? And just how bad are our roads and highways going to get under their watch?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, record investments when it comes to maintenance on our roads, record investment when it comes to capital infrastructure. I don't know what the member opposite is trying to measure. Like, if he gets out and about across Manitoba, he will see heavy equipment operating, a lot different equipment than we ever had before, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Newer, modern, bigger equipment, which is more efficient than ever before. Those are the kinds of investments that Manitobans are asking us to make. Those are the investments we're making on behalf of Manitobans, and we're getting things done.
We got the big airways.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
I've been to Neepawa, Pinawa, Boissevain, Deloraine, and just like the Johnny Cash song, everywhere I go, man, people are complaining about the potholes and the lack of snow clearing under this PC government. Now I've tabled the documents that show the reason for this lack of attention to our roads and highways. They are selling off the heavy equipment. They sold off 300 pieces of...
Order. Government benches, calm down. The Honourable Deputy Premier. I'll give you a few more seconds. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
The only place that the government is doing anything is in the form of press release, because anyone driving on the roads sees that they are in a rough shape. When will they stop selling off heavy equipment and finally invest in our highways and roads?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, our government is committed to infrastructure in Manitoba. If the member gets out and drives on our roads, he will see many miles of new roads, new pavement, new bridges, new culverts. We're making investments, record investments over the next 3 years alone. $500 million of each of the next 3 years for infrastructure, for roads alone, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's something the industry has asked for, it's something we're delivering, and we're delivering these on behalf of Manitobans.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
Must be an election year if the minister got a road paved in Carberry, but everywhere else in Manitoba, people are complaining about the terrible condition of our roads, highways. There are so many potholes. The other thing that we are hearing time and time again from Manitobans is the desperate state of our healthcare system. We know that the wait times continue to increase, and according to frontline emergency room doctors, things are worse than they were a year ago when this premier took office. It's a record of failure. It's a crisis in the healthcare system. That's a fact. When will this cabinet stop cutting healthcare in Manitoba?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we've seen this from the NDP for decades now. They come in and they repeat the same fictitious lines over and over again, hoping that Manitobans would believe what they said. The reality is Manitobans are not buying the rhetoric. The fact of the matter is our government has delivered record high investments, close to $7 billion. That's $1 billion more than the NDP ever put into healthcare. Mr. Deputy Speaker, those are the facts. We are making record investments on behalf of Manitobans, and we're getting things done on behalf of Manitobans when it comes to healthcare.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Well, I have the facts right here in my hand, which were actually compiled by this minister's government. So he can quarrel with me all that he likes, but he's actually just throwing shade at his own government. What the facts in hand reveal is that at the Grace Emergency Department, at the St. Boniface Emergency Department, and at the Health Sciences Center Emergency Department, wait times continue to go up month after month after month. The data published yesterday were longer than the data we saw earlier in the summer. And of course, the summer was earlier than what we saw in the spring. Wait times in emergency rooms continue to go up. I'll table the documents with the minister in the hopes that he finally answers the question, when will the PCs stop cutting health care?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, here we go again. The reality is record investments in healthcare, the tune of $7 billion. And we want to talk about doctors in Manitoba. Guess what happened under the NDP?
Fired them.
We were, in 2001, per capita, Manitoba was the 4th in the country when it came to per capita, doctors per capita. What happened? In 2016? 8th. We dropped to number 8 in the country when it came to doctors per capita. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that's the legacy the NDP left. That's the legacy that we're trying to fix. That's why we're making capital investments. We're investing in human resources, and we're making historic investments in healthcare in Manitoba. That's what Manitobans have asked us to do. That's what we're delivering on behalf of Manitobans.
The Honourable Official Opposition Leader on a final supplementary.
I find it surprising that the minister would say that in this chamber because he comes from a health region that saw unprecedented closures of emergency departments and hospitals all summer long. Everyone in Prairie Mountain has been reaching out to us time and time again saying that this government is making an absolute mess of our healthcare system. No one believes the progressive conservatives when it comes to healthcare because this simple fact is true. Healthcare has never been this bad in Manitoba, and their cuts are a direct contributing factor. We know that folks are looking for improvements to healthcare, but the first thing that needs to happen is that the PCs need to stop with their cuts. Will they finally do so today?
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, record investments in healthcare, $1 billion more than the NDP ever put into healthcare. What is the record, though, when it comes to closing emergency rooms under the NDP? Let's talk about them. Let's name them. Emerson, Pembina, McGregor, St. Claude, Gladstone, Vita, Erickson, Rossman, Wawanesa, Myrtle, Rivers, Boulder, McCreary, Winnipeg Osas, Whitemouth, Tula. That is the NDP legacy. Manitobans cannot the NDP when it comes to health care. This government is delivering health care for Manitobans. They don't want any more NDP rhetoric.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Miigwech, Deputy Speaker. Time and time again, we've laid out the case that this Premier seems to think that there's one set of rules for her and her PC caucus and one set for the rest of Manitobans. We've learned that the Premier is using a secret email address. Manitobans know when government officials communicate on government business, there should be transparency and accountability. But Deputy Speaker, that's not what we're seeing from the Premier and her PC caucus. Will the Premier tell this House why she thinks she doesn't have to follow the same rules as everybody else?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, certainly the opposition knows a lot about secrets. If the member opposite wants to talk about secrets, she could just turn over to the member who's speaking from her left and ask about all the secrets that he has, Mr. Deputy Speaker. However, I would ask the member opposite to perhaps leave the grassy knoll, and perhaps she wants to apologize to the member for Fort White, who she brought false information to this House several weeks ago.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Deputy Speaker, we've shown that the Premier forgot she sold $31 million in real estate, because who forgets $31 million? Now we learn that she's using a government money to operate a secret email address. The only reason the Premier is doing that is to avoid accountability and transparency. That's just like Brian Pallister, who did the same thing when he was off in Costa Rica. Yeah. I will table the documents for the House. Why does the Premier think that she can use a secret email address when no other person working in government is allowed to do the same thing?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the NDP is a house of secrets. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are so many secrets that are hidden within that caucus. It's hard to reveal them all at once, but I'm sure more will be revealed as we get closer to an election day. However, I would say this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this particular member has a reputation of bringing false allegations to this House that are proven false. This is a great opportunity for her to stand up and apologize to the member for Fort White.
The Honourable Member for St. John's on a final supplementary.
Well, Deputy Speaker, we know that the Premier doesn't like to work on weekends, and we know she forgets things like $31 million in real estate. And now we know the Premier has a secret email address set up to duck accountability from Manitobans. That's not leadership, Deputy Speaker, and that's not what Manitobans want to see. This practice should stop immediately. So will the Premier get up in the House today, apologize to Manitobans for using a secret email, start doing her job, and get rid of the secret email today?
Great job.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Of course, while the Premier was out listening to Manitobans all summer, the Leader of the Opposition was like Johnny Cash and was touring everywhere other than Manitoba. Mr. Deputy Speaker, he had book signing tours all over the place. Was having white champagne, I'm sure, and ensuring that he could meet with a lot of people who had a lot of high incomes, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But I would say to him on this, while he was touring over the last few weeks on the tour of broken dreams from NDP leaders across Western Canada, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he should have been in Manitoba listening to those concerns from Manitobans. But again, this is an opportunity for the member to stand up and apologize for the false accusations that she made against the member for Fort White. Please stand up, do the honorable thing, and apologize to that member.
Ministers. Order. Order. Opposition members. Honourable Member for Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Manitobans deserve good online services from Manitoba Public Insurance. Project NOVA was meant to upgrade MPI's online services within a couple years at the cost of $82 million. Then the project grew to $128 million. Now it is ballooned to $300 million. We are worried that all Manitobans will be on the hook for these project overruns. Can the minister tell us how much money taxpayers, not just the ratepayers, will have to pay for Project NOVA?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, while the NDP were trying to raid MPI when they were in government and take that money and transfer that money to things that had nothing to do with vehicle insurance, they should have been investing in technology. Instead, they let a computer system language for more than 20 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's now an early 1990s technology. Kids were operating on Atari gaming systems at a time when the NDP had old technology. If it was up to them, they'd still be operating on Commodore 64s in MPI, Madam Speaker. Yes, we have to update the technology because the NDP did nothing with it.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We knew the former Premier, Brian Pallister, interfered in MPI to help his friends. His interference delayed the launch of Project NOVA, which now cost more than doubled. Ratepayers will be on the hook for these overruns. But it's not unclear how much the taxpayers will have to pay for Project NOVA. Can the minister tell us, the House, how much money the taxpayers will have to pay for the Project NOVA cost overrun?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the last time that the MPI technology was upgraded, Miami Vice was the #1 hit TV series in North America, and people were using Rubik's Cubes as a new gaming device. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I know that the member opposite would languish that again if they were ever in government, does want to have new technology. It wasn't updated for more than 3 decades, which is probably how long it'll take for the NDP to get back in government with questions like that.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Project NOVA was meant to be only cost $82 million. Then it grew to $128 million. now it's skyrocketed to over $300 million. To make matters worse, the project will take twice as long to complete.
Order.
Manitobans are on the hook for these cost overruns. It is just not clear how much that ratepayers and taxpayers will have to pay. Can the minister tell us, the House, how much Project Nova will cost Manitoba ratepayer and the taxpayers?
The Honorable Minister of Justice.
The last time the technology at MPI was updated, the K car was, I think, the #1 selling vehicle in North America. Kids are busy on their Nintendo playing Mario Kart, and Phil Collins was the top-selling artist in North America. I know the member opposite wants to live in the 80s. I actually enjoyed the 80s, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but I would ask him to come with us into this new time. We're going to have new technology at MPI. If he wants to go back to the 80s, that was a land of confusion, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Point Douglas.
Miigwech, Deputy Speaker. It's clear more than ever that Manitobans need a safe consumption sites. Harm reduction advocates are saying that the people are not overdosing because they're using too much. They're overdosing because of a toxic drug supply. A safe consumption site would help people ensure the drugs that they're using are safe. It would save lives, Deputy Speaker. Will the minister do the right thing and commit to opening a safe consumption site today?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I just want to point out that, you know, the members opposite feel that they have all the answers in this field, but they're only sticking to one particular tool in a huge toolbox. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are investing in evidence-based systems of care, and we will continue to respond to the needs of Manitobans. I know why the members opposite are a little bit nervous in terms of how they're approaching this situation. A well-known journalist actually commented on their own leader's plan that the NDP addictions piece is not worth the paper it's written on.
Huh. Wow. Wow. Wow.
The Honourable Member for Point Douglas on a supplementary question.
Miigwech, Deputy Speaker. I was at Salome Mission last week. They are concerned about the folks of Manitoba. They want a safe consumption site. Main Street Project are concerned about Manitobans. They want a safe consumption site. They can't even keep up with how many people are dying of overdoses. And this minister is talking about they're doing everything they can to support Manitobans and keep them alive. Why are Manitobans dying in this province? Why doesn't she go and visit other safe consumption sites in other provinces and listen to how they're doing it and saving lives? Manitobans deserve that. Will the minister open a safe consumption site and do the right thing and help save lives in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This article goes on to comment on the Leader of the Opposition's plan to say that this report that he released on an important issue like the illicit drug addiction is usually a good idea to source your materials, which he did not. Otherwise, your paper comes across looking like an incomplete middle school report that would probably get a failing grade from the most generous social studies teacher.
Who said that?
There's nothing new or original in the paper or plan. It's largely a cut and paste job from the existing literature any grade 6 student could find online.
The Honourable Member for Point Douglas on a final supplementary.
Yeah, never says harm reduction.
Miigwech, Deputy Speakers. The PCs refuse to listen. Fact, Manitobans are overdosing due to the toxic drug supply. Fact, safe consumption sites would help people whether they're to identify whether their drugs are safe to use. Fact, safe consumption sites save lives. Fact, every other province in Western Canada has one, but this province. It's time for the PCs to listen to the experts, get on board, and open a safe consumption site, do the right thing, and help save Manitoban lives.
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And including in this article, which I will table today, the author goes on to say, if addictions are a crisis today because of a lack of government spending to eliminate poverty and reduce the number of children in care, it's an extraordinary damning legacy for the NDP. Not only did the former government create a structural deficit during good economic times and double the size of provincial debt, all the spending on anti-poverty measures, social housing and child welfare apparently didn't yield very promising results. If the leader of the opposition is right in his assessment, the real story is the failed policies of his own party.
Order. I just want to encourage members not to heckle their own members. The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Earlier this year, we revealed the government's own emission modeling. It showed that the PC's tiny measures on climate won't have a meaningful impact to reduce greenhouse gases. And in fact, emissions still will be going up. Now this government is backing away from even the meager goals it has put in place. Reporting on the so-called carbon savings account is nowhere to be seen. This measure expires at the end of the year. Will the minister be renewing it, and will a carbon price be part of this measure going forward?
The Honourable Minister for Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and certainly appreciate the question, the recycled question from the member from Wolseley. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know we've had this discussion before. We're working with the federal government, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We know under the leadership of our Premier, who continues to work with the federal government and the Prime Minister as well, we're ensuring that we're getting this correct for Manitobans, and we'll continue to do the right thing for Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley on a supplementary.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Manitobans have been so disappointed by the PC's approach to climate change. The Conservatives don't take responsibility to reduce emissions. They've backed away from reporting on Efficiency Manitoba. They aren't reporting on their own meager carbon savings account, and the latter expires at the end of this year. So I simply ask the minister again, will he be renewing his measure, or will a carbon price be part of his approach going forward?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And again, I'll just remind the member that between 2018 and 2020, our government reduced emissions by 1.3 megatons, Mr. Deputy Speaker. These numbers directly reflect the host of emissions reductions actions and policies undertaken by this government, not by the former NDP government.
Correct.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley on a final supplementary.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the PCs are simply carrying on Brian Pallister's misguided approach. The government's own modeling shows emissions are projected to keep climbing in Manitoba. And on even the smallest measures, they have not been reported. We're more than 2 years behind now on any reporting in this area. The government's so-called carbon savings account ends this year. So I ask the minister, has this government missed even its own meager goals? And will a carbon price be part of their approach going forward?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And our government continues to take action for Manitobans, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Just to name a few, we're helping Manitobans by investing in green projects and initiatives through the Conservation and Climate Fund, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We are helping Manitobans by expanding our watershed districts to now include 109 municipalities across this province, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And we're also helping Manitobans through efficiency trucking program by providing rebates to applicants who update their machinery to make it more environmentally friendly. Just to name a few, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we've done more in 6 years than the NDP did in 17 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We know there are shortages of doctors and nurses in Manitoba, with both quitting, saying they have no support. I tabled pages from Manitoba Health's annual report that shows, over 2 fiscal years, from 2020 to 2022, the physician recruitment and retention program saw a cut of nearly $1 million, from $24 million to $23 million. At the same time, expenditures for out-of-province physicians have increased by $4 million, primarily due to caseload volume. Can the Premier explain why, when doctors are quitting and leaving the province, this government actually reduced spending on keeping them in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This morning I was in the Southdale constituency getting my flu shot, and I want to thank Salil Prashar, pharmacist manager at the Southdale Walmart, for administering that flu shot. I encourage all members in the chamber today to get your flu shot to reduce incidence of the flu, and to also get your bivalent COVID vaccine as soon as possible. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our government has invested $1 billion more than the NDP ever did into healthcare. We're working with our stakeholder groups, Doctors Manitoba. We're at the front lines. We're talking to physicians and other healthcare professionals about
the minister's time has expired. The honourable member for St. Boniface on a supplementary.
Madam Speaker, it's not just the fund for retaining doctors that was cut. We've been getting SOSs from nurses, and we know there's a massive nursing shortage. We're told it's everywhere. So why is it that in Manitoba, nursing recruitment and retention initiatives, which are supposed to provide grants to nurses for bilingual and French requirement positions, personal care home grants, relocation assistance, and continuing education funding, has also been cut? They were cut by $174,000 from $3.27 million in 2020-21 to $3.1 million in 2021-22. Why, given the nursing shortage, is the government cutting attraction and retention programs?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The member for St. Boniface is just wrong. We are investing in incentives to ensure our nurses stay here in the province. I look forward to, in the next week or so, bringing forward a very comprehensive plan for recruitment, training, and retention, not just for our nurses, but for a variety of healthcare professionals. Mr. Deputy Speaker, during the COVID pandemic, we offered a $6 an hour premium to staff for all hours worked. We have an ICU recruitment and retention initiative grant up to $3,000, incentives for full-time employment up to $2,000, academic allowances, and we will be announcing more very soon.
The honourable member for St. Boniface on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Still on the subject of healthcare, in June of this year, it emerged that at least 15 residents of Oakview Place were targeted by staff for abuse. Winnipeg Regional Health Authority and Extendicare both admitted that policies and protocols weren't followed because the first whistleblower was ignored, and the WRHA only acted when they were contacted. This summer, we stood with family members of residents who'd been targeted. Some only found out that their loved ones had been allegedly assaulted after they died. Some staff are facing criminal charges, but where's the accountability for the company that ignored warnings? If ignoring assaults on 15 residents doesn't get a license pulled, what will?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I can assure you to the member that this government finds those actions as being unacceptable, and that the Department of Health has certainly gone through their investigation process, as well as the police investigation that has taken place, and certainly further considerations of those actions are being deliberated on, and the considerations of those licenses are certainly something that is continually being deliberated on.
The honourable member for Swan River.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Manitobans in our rural communities feel their health care didn't matter after the NDP shut down the 16 emergency rooms and left hundreds of communities without urgent and emergency care close to home. Can the Minister of Health please tell us what she is doing to rectify this situation created by the previous NDP government?
Hear, hear. Hear.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
I thank the member for that question. Members in the chamber will remember when rural health care was absolutely devastated by the NDP. That is why my department, through the Clinical and Preventative Services Plan, has announced a groundbreaking for a new $127 million hospital in Neepawa to strengthen our health care in our rural areas. The hospital will be 4 times the size of the existing site and will nearly double the amount of acute care beds to 63. It will also increase the capacity of surgeries, diagnostics, as well as expand the emergency department to include more ambulance bays and trauma rooms.
Minister's time has expired. The honourable member for St. James.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the federal government has committed to $10 a day childcare. Other provinces are taking action by reducing the daily maximum fee that all daycares can charge to make care more affordable. Manitoba isn't taking that approach, instead requiring that parents apply for subsidy rather than making this automatic and universal. The result is that funds are not being put to use and families are missing out. I ask the minister, will he change his approach and bring down the maximum fees all daycares charge in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And well over 107 sets of questions, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I finally get a question on early childhood education. And we know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that Manitoba was already one of the lowest child care fees across this great country of ours, Mr. Deputy Speaker. By beginning of 2023, we're going to be at that $10 a day average daycare. We're going to be 3 years ahead of schedule, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's good news for Manitobans. We're listening to Manitobans, and we're getting it done, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Order. The honourable member for St. James.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, $10 a day should mean a maximum of $10 per day. That's the direction other provinces are moving by reducing the daily maximum that daycares can charge. Manitoba is the only province in the entire country that isn't doing this and is instead using a subsidy approach. Families are being left behind as a result, and funds meant for families are being left unspent. These benefits need to be universal to ensure everyone sees the benefit. Will the minister change approach and bring down the maximum fee for all daycares in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and it gives me great pleasure to stand and put some facts on the record and something that we are doing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the NDP under 17 years did not do. They didn't move an inch, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We're providing subsidies to over 300% subsidized spaces. We were at 6,000 subsidized spaces, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We're now at 18,000. We have more work to do. We're going to be doing more work. Stay tuned. far more work in the last year than the NDP did over this last over their 17 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for St. James on a final supplementary.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Manitoba was to have halved its fees this year, and there are only 2 months left. Every other province is making benefits universal by reducing their daily maximum fees for daycare. This ensures programming is accessible and truly universal. That's not what this government is doing here in Manitoba. These federal funds should be used to reduce the daily maximum fees for everyone. Why is the PC government failing to ensure all Manitobans receive the benefit from the National Agreement on Childcare?
Order. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Oh, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm listening today to the member from St. James, and he's flip-flopping like a pickerel on a dock, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have increased the threshold for subsidies by 45%, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That means, and here, I know math's hard for the NDP, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but here we go. So the average daily fee for parents are going to be $10. The Minister Gould, the federal minister, applauds Manitoba government for being a leader in the country in this initiative, Mr. Deputy Speaker. People of low income are going to be paying $2 a day. The maximum fees are just over $20, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We on this side of the House are listening to
The minister's time has
Manitobans.
expired. Time for questions has expired. Petition. Oh. Okay. It is the opinion of the clerks that due to the amount of disorder, there should be one final question permitted by the member for Notre Dame. I will allow that, just one question, not in 3 sections. So the honourable member for Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Home care workers in the Winnipeg region have approached me to report a new schedule optimizing tool used to schedule their appointments. They are very concerned that this is not providing the time necessary to appropriately help their clients. In some cases, the time to drive, provide morning care, and provide a bath are being cut from 45 minutes to 20 minutes. Morning care can include washing, dressing, providing medication and breakfast, catheter care, changing nitro and pain patches, and administering eye drops, changing incontinence products. All of this, plus bathing, plus the driving to the client's house in 20 minutes, these home care workers are rightly concerned. Why is this minister and this government cutting home care to the bone?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I appreciate the question. This government has certainly indicated that we are going to review our home care structuring and our home care system, and we are in the process of doing exactly that.
Getting it done.
We're getting it done, and we will continue to get it done. Madam Speaker, our initiative to create the senior strategy to do it was voted against by the NDP, so I don't know what support you're giving to seniors.
Time for questions has expired. Petitions. The Honourable Member for River Heights.
To the Legislative Assembly. The background for this petition is as follows. A hearing aid
Order,
is a
please.
battery-powered electronic device designed to improve
Order.
ability to perceive.
Colleagues, I appreciate that many of us are morning people. I appreciate the energy and enthusiasm, but I need to be able to hear the member for River Heights and would just request that conversations either in the loges or perhaps if they're a little more than a few comments in the hallways, that's just fine. But please, if we can keep the volume at an appropriate level, that'd be great. The Honourable Member for River Heights.
A hearing aid is a battery-powered electronic device designed to improve an individual's ability to perceive sound. Worn in or behind a person's ear, they make some sounds louder, helping people hear better when it's quiet and when it's noisy. People who suffer hearing loss, whether due to aging, illness, employment, or accident, not only lose the ability to communicate effectively with friends, family, or colleagues, they also can experience unemployment, social isolation, and struggles with mental health. Hearing loss can also impact the safety of an individual with hearing loss, as it affects the ability to hear cars coming, safety alarms, call 911, etc. A global commission on the site of the Research for Dementia Care and Prevention released an updated consensus report in July 2020, identifying 12 key risk factors for dementia and cognitive decline. The strongest risk factor that was indicated was hearing loss. It was calculated that up to 8% of the total number of dementia cases could potentially be avoided with management of hearing loss. Hearing aids are therefore essential to the mental health and well-being of Manitobans, especially to those at significant risk of dementia, Alzheimer's, a disorder of the brain affecting cognition in the ever-growing senior population. Audiologists are healthcare professionals who help patients decide which kind of hearing aid will work best for them based on the type of hearing loss, patient's age, and ability to manage small devices, lifestyle, and ability to afford. The cost of hearing aids can be prohibitive to many Manitobans depending on their income and circumstances. Hearing aids cost an average of $995 to $4,000 per year, and many professionals say the hearing aids only work at their best for 5 years. Manitoba residents under the age of 18 who require a hearing aid as prescribed by an otolaryngologist or audiologist will receive either an 80% reimbursement from Manitoba Health of a fixed amount for an analog device up to a maximum of $500 per year, or 80% of a fixed amount for a digital or analog programmable device up to a maximum of $1,800. However, this reimbursement is not available to Manitobans who need the device who are over the age of 18, which will result in financial hardship for many young people entering the workforce, students, and families. In addition, seniors, representing 14.3% of Manitoba's population, are not eligible for reimbursement despite being the group most likely in need of a hearing aid. Most insurance companies only provide a minimal partial cost of a hearing aid, and many Manitobans, especially retired persons, old age pensioners, and low-income earners, do not have access to health insurance plans. The province of Quebec's Hearing Devices Program covers all costs related to hearing aids and assistive listening devices, including the purchase, repair, and replacement. Alberta offers subsidies to all seniors 65 and over and low-income adults 18 to 64 once every 5 years. New Brunswick provides coverage for the purchase and maintenance not covered by other agencies or private health insurance plans, as well as assistance for those for whom the purchase would cause financial hardship. Manitobans over age 18 are only eligible for support for hearing aids if they're receiving employment and income assistance, and the reimbursement only provides a maximum of $500 a year. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to consider hearing loss as a medical treatment under Manitoba Health, to urge the provincial government to provide income-based coverage for hearing aids to all those who need them, as hearing has been proven to be essential to Manitobans' cognitive, mental, and social health and well-being. Signed by Rhea Axma, Kim Jorand, Alana Jelly, and many, many others.
Are there any other petitions? The honourable member for Elmwood.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of the petition is as follows. Number one, over 25,000 vehicles per day cross the Louise Bridge, which has served as a vital link for vehicular traffic between northeast Winnipeg and the downtown for the last 110 years. Number two, the current structure will undoubtedly be declared unsafe in a few years as it has deteriorated extensively, becoming functionally obsolete, subject to more frequent unplanned repairs, and cannot be widened to accommodate future traffic capacity. Number three, as far back as 2008, the City of Winnipeg has studied where the new replacement bridge should be situated. Number four, after including the bridge replacement in the city's 5-year capital budget forecast in 2009, the new bridge became a short-term construction priority in the city's transportation master plan of 2011. Number five, city capital and budget plans identified replacement of the Louise Bridge on a site just east of the bridge and expropriated homes there on the south side of Nairn Avenue in anticipation of a 2015 start. Number six, in 2014, the new city administration did not make use of available federal infrastructure funds. Number seven, the new Louise Bridge Committee began its campaign to demand a new bridge, and its surveys confirmed residents wanted a new bridge beside the current bridge, with the old bridge kept open for local traffic. Number eight, the NDP provincial government signaled its firm commitment to partner with the city on replacing the Louise Bridge in its 2015 throne speech. Unfortunately, provincial infrastructure initiatives such as the new Louise Bridge came to a halt with the election of the Progressive Conservative government in 2016. Number nine, more recently, the city tethered the Louise Bridge replacement issue to its new transportation master plan and Eastern Corridor project. Its recommendations have now identified the location of the new Louise Bridge to be placed just to the west of the current bridge, not to the east as originally proposed. Number 10, the city expropriation process has begun. The $6.35 million street upgrade of Nairn Avenue from Watt Street to the 111-year-old bridge is complete. Number 11, the new Premier has a duty to direct the provincial government to provide financial assistance to the city so it can complete this long overdue vital link between Northeast Winnipeg and Transcona. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. Number one, to urge the new Premier to financially assist the City of Winnipeg on building this 3-lane bridge in each direction to maintain this vital link between Northeast Winnipeg, Transcona, and the downtown. Number two, to urge the provincial government to recommend that the City of Winnipeg keep the old bridge fully open to traffic while the new bridge is under construction. Number three, to urge the provincial government to consider the feasibility of keeping it open for active transportation in the future. And this petition is signed by many, many Manitobans.
Are there any other petitions? Seeing none, we move to grievances. Seeing none, we move to orders of the day. Government business, the Honourable Government House Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd like to announce that the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs will meet on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. to consider Bill number 225, the Non-Disclosure Agreements Act.
Sounds like a good idea.
It has been announced by the Honourable Government House Leader that the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs will meet on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. to consider Bill 225, the Non-Disclosure Agreements Act. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, could you please resolve into Committee of Supply?
Certainly. It has been announced by the Honourable Government House Leader that we will now resolve into Committee of Supply. Call in Mr. Deputy Speaker, please take the chair. Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates on the Department of Justice. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber. Would the Minister and critic like to introduce their staff? The Honourable Minister.
Yes, I have joining me again today the learned Deputy Minister, David Wright, the very efficient and effective Special Assistant Chief of Staff, Marty McNichol, and the highly respected Maria Campos.
We thank the Honourable Minister for those introductions. Does the official critic wish to introduce their staff? The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Miigwech, and I have Rylan Remina Rice with me again today. Miigwech.
We thank the critic for that introduction. As previously noted, questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner, and the floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Member for St. John's.
I'd like to go back to the job posting for the IIU Executive Director. I did get the job posting, and I noticed that, and I'm wondering if the Minister can elaborate on some of the conditions of employment. One of the conditions is must be a member or eligible for membership of the Law Society of Manitoba. And so I'm just seeking clarification on whether or not that means that the individual, what specifically does that mean? Because I would imagine that that would cancel out several folks that would be interested in applying, particularly when we're looking at those within the civil service. So I'm just wondering more about that.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I think staff are just sort of looking up that reference, but while they do, I want to just answer a couple of questions that the member asked yesterday that we took as notice. Can provide some of those answers now. So the Honourable Member for St. John's asked me to list all of the technical staff that are currently active. That composes two individuals, both highly respected individuals, Marty McNichol, who's the Special Assistant to the Minister, and Kristen McCallum, who's the Executive Assistant to the Minister. There was also a question, I thought a good thoughtful question regarding the John Howard Society and access to the Winnipeg Remand Centre. So we're advised by officials that the Remand Centre up until 2 weeks ago was still being used as an isolation facility, which may have impacted access. However, if there are outstanding issues, we're going to look into it and address those specific circumstances. And then I believe there's a question regarding IIU positions. There are currently 15 FTEs assigned to the IIU, which include one executive director, one office manager, one director of investigations, 2 team commanders, 8 investigators, 1 information administrator, and 1 manager. And as of today, which might have been yesterday, but it probably hasn't changed today, there are no vacancies at the IIU. And then there was a question regarding public inquests. Under the Fatalities Inquiries Act, the Chief Medical Examiner must review each investigation report and make a decision on an inquest. The Chief Medical Examiner is responsible for calling inquests in the province of Manitoba. The Act provides direction regarding the circumstances where an inquest may be mandatory or discretionary. Where it is discretionary, the discretion lies solely with the Chief Medical Examiner. I think that goes to the question of who's making these decisions. The decision to combine matters into one inquest is at the discretion of the Chief Medical Examiner. There are currently 29 active inquests, and 2 are completed awaiting reports.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
The other piece that I had asked for in respect of the IIU is a breakdown on gender of the what we now know is 15 FTEs, and from that, how many are in BIPOC?
The Honourable Minister.
So I believe that there's an effort to continue to get that information. I just wanted to provide the information that I had available today back to the member to not keep her or her staff waiting.
The Honourable Member for St. John.
And then I asked, I started today's session with a question on the conditions of employment. So I don't know if the minister is going to get back to me on that or plans on answering that.
The Honourable Minister.
I hope that I'm understanding the member's question correctly. I think that she asked what the reference was to must be a member or eligible for membership within the Law Society of Manitoba, which essentially means that an individual must have a Bachelor of Laws or a JD, a Juris Doctor degree with extensive practice experience. So I think in essence, you must be a lawyer.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Last spring, the minister passed Bill 30, the Police Services Amendment and Law Enforcement Review Amendment Act, which the minister brought forward in an attempt to rectify issues at LIRA. At committee, we heard from presenters that the bill does not go nearly far enough and won't solve the systemic issues with LIRA. Can the minister explain whether he has any plans to introduce legislation to properly fix issues that have been plaguing LIRA for many, many years?
If I may, just before I recognize the minister, I know some members are having conversations. I know some members are having conversations, and staff also are wanting to hear. So if we could maybe take conversations elsewhere, like we would in another kind of committee room. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Yeah, there were concerns raised with LIRA, and I know that there's, concerns that have been around for a long time. I think that, the essence of the structure of LIRA is as it existed when the former government, being the NDP government, was in power for many years, and there were concerns at that time too. So yeah, there's 2 different sort of things that I would say that are specific when it comes to changes. One is the important, but I recognize still relatively minor amendment that came forward with that bill in terms of the filing time and the time frame. But that was raised as an issue, and that it was not in line with other jurisdictions, and that it should be extended. And so we did that through legislation. But I also think that, and we've talked about the issue of codes of conduct as it relates to legislation that we've brought forward, passed, and are going to be working to implement over the next year. And codes of conduct within a law enforcement agency, while many might exist, I'm not sure that they're consistent. I'm not sure that they're always readily transparent, and if they are necessarily applied consistently. And so one of the things we want to do, and of course codes of conduct are things that aren't necessarily criminal in nature. Things that are criminal in nature would go to the IIU, and then between that and LIRA, there's an awful lot of things that perhaps could be captured with codes of conduct, and that could be better solved and better addressed in that way. So as I stated at the time of the legislation, the extension is important because it's something that had been asked for and probably was asked for during the time that the former government was in place too, and I'm not sure why they didn't act upon it, but a member might have more information on that than I do. But also that I think that the move to codes of conduct within law enforcement across the province will give another avenue, and perhaps a better avenue than just LIRA. But having said that, that doesn't mean that we won't continue to look at LIRA and other things that might be beneficial to ensure that where there are legitimate concerns, that they are addressed in an appropriate way and in a transparent way.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Can the Minister provide us an update on exactly where in the process policing institutions are at in developing those codes of conduct?
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, so there's a number of things in terms of the bill that was introduced, codes of conduct, policing standards, that the good folks within our department are working on. I think we'll be seeking some external help on some of those as well, and I think the member might hear more about that in relatively short order.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
So then nothing has been done up until this point in respect of actually the development of any codes of conduct. Is that true?
The Honourable Minister.
Not true.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
One of the things about Bill 30 that I raised in the House here was, codes of conduct. There was nothing in the bill that discussed what would happen if police officers violated or were in contravention of codes of conduct. And so, I put that on the record again. I don't think that that's strong enough when we're looking at police relations, particularly with BIPOC communities that often will have a very different experience in interactions or coming into contact with various policing institutions across the province and certainly across the country. And so how does the minister plan on strengthening, if it can be strengthened at all, this new kind of move towards codes of conduct, so that there's, if officers are in contravention of these new codes of conduct, then what is the consequences of that?
The Honourable Minister.
I thank the member for the question. I wouldn't want to leave, I think, a wrong impression that there exists no codes of conduct within law enforcement right now. But I think the importance of it is that it be consistent, and then there be transparency around it. And that's the same when it comes to policing standards. It's not that law enforcement doesn't have any standards. Of course they do. But there's an importance for it to be consistent across different law enforcement, because it is a bit of a patchwork. Sounds like a negative phrase, but it's not in this situation. There's a lot of different kinds of law enforcement in the province of Manitoba. They're not all RSCMP, and they're not all municipal forces, and they're not all peace officers in terms of status. But the standards need to be transparent, and they need to be consistent, and that's what we're moving to in the same way to the member's question. Codes of conduct would be something similar. I think there are codes of conduct in many agencies, but there isn't maybe a consistency and perhaps the transparency that the public rightfully would ask for. Now, the member might be asking why weren't the codes of conduct themselves in legislation. One would be, I think, the importance of consultation. Two would be the importance of flexibility, because codes of conduct probably need to be able to be changed as circumstances change faster than, as much as I revere this institution, it's not always the fastest moving institution, I think, when it comes to the legislature. And I think the consultations are important, and I take the member's question to heart about the BIPOC community. Certainly at committee, we heard some concerns about, maybe not enough consultation with the BIPOC community, and sometimes it's not just about the nature of the amount of the consultation. Sometimes it's the nature and the qualitative part of that consultation. So I took those to heart, and I think the member will, in relatively short order, see some announcements on that indicate we took them to heart.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Again, I'm not entirely sure if that answered the question, but again, this move towards having codes of conduct across different policing institutions, and there being a lack of consequences. I know that there's standards that policing institutions, again, whoever it may be, are supposed to adhere to, but often, as I said, we have, that's the whole reason that LIRA exists, because the public comes into contact with law enforcement, and there are many opportunities or many examples of members not adhering to those standards. And so, we know that LIRA almost, I don't know what it was, I can't remember, something like 95% of the cases that come before, and I'm not know if that's specifically the percentage, but it's certainly high. There is never any consequences to Manitobans' complaint against a particular police officer. And so one could suggest or argue that if there's no consequences attached to codes of conduct, it is mainly just window dressing. It's just the same where there's not really a robust or consequential public complaints body. We heard again at committee for Bill 7, the Police Services Amendment Act, so enhancing independent investigation units operation, which obviously was regarding the strengthening of IIU and how Bill 7 didn't go far enough. Can the minister explain whether he's had any plans to introduce legislation to further strengthen the IIU? And I've asked questions about, the breakdown of staff or investigators working in, and I'm going to specifically talk about investigators. So, talked about one of the things that can strengthen IIU is to have a representative investigative body. And so I know I've asked for the breakdown of, a gendered breakdown and certainly a BIPOC breakdown of those investigators. But is the minister considering any other legislation to further strengthen the IIU?
The Honourable Minister.
I think there's a few questions in that one question, so I want to make sure I try to address them. Member started off talking about codes of conduct and a lack of consequences for codes of conduct, and I think respectfully she's prejudging the outcome of something that neither she nor I have seen at this point. So there'll be appropriate and good consultation when it comes to standards and codes of conduct. But those should happen first in terms of the consultation. So respectfully, I don't think the member should judge something that hasn't been done yet, although it's appropriate to put on record her concerns of what might happen, and so she's done that. But I don't know that I would go further and poison the well on something that hasn't been completed yet. The next question was regarding legislation on the IIU, and the member will know that I've indicated, and I've said in this House before, that when it comes to things like the IIU, it's developed over the years from its inception. Talked a bit about the history of that and my own history in this House before I was minister and before I was in government. Won't repeat that for her because I'm sure she probably doesn't want to hear it again. But we don't ever reach a point where we go, okay, I think we're in a perfect model now. And so I think there's always looking at ways that things can be bettered or improved. But I wouldn't presume to preview, any legislative direction in the future in an estimates committee, and those would be provided in different forms.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Can the minister explain why expenditures for the IIU will increase by $49,000 in 2022-2023 compared to 2021-2022, which is apparently page 46 of estimates?
The Honourable Minister.
I understand from officials it's just the scheduled salary increases.
Honourable Member for St. John's.
Can the minister share how the new executive director for the IIU will be chosen? So who screens all the applicants, who will sit on the hiring board for that, and will there be Indigenous, Black, or persons of color sitting in the hiring board in deciding who the new executive director for IIU will be?
Honourable Minister.
As I indicated yesterday, I believe that AMC, SCO, and MKO are involved in the screening process.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Yes, I remember that the minister said that our provincial PTOs were involved, but are they going to be sitting on the actual hiring board, i.e. will they have some decision-making capacity in who the new IIU executive director will be?
The Honourable Minister.
They'll obviously have significant influence. I don't know that I'd want to characterize it sort of beyond that.
Honourable Member for St. John's.
So again, that doesn't answer who's sitting on the hiring board, because AMC, MKO, and SCO may be part of, apparently, some type of screening process. But of course, we all know that it's the hiring board that makes the final decision, or the decision on who's going to be, who will be presented as that particular successful candidate. So who on the hiring board, well, who's going to be on the hiring board, I'm not sure if that can be shared, but certainly if that can't be shared, how many BIPOC members of that hiring board will be on there?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I don't think I can add anything to the description that I gave. AMC, SCO, and MKO will be involved with the process, and will obviously have influence.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
On page 39 of the estimates book, under correctional services, other expenditures are listed as 24 million. Can the minister break out what these expenses are for?
The Honourable Minister.
Their operational costs that would include things like food and medical services and psychological services. We can probably provide a breakdown in categories. I'm not sure that we can provide every check that's issued from the department, but I think that there's probably buckets or categories that we can break them into for you.
Honourable Member for St. John's.
I guess I would imagine on page 42, other expenditures are listed at 13,611. Can the minister break down what these expenses are for?
The Honourable Minister.
Sure, we'll figure out the amount into the categories. I'm told that the major categories are communications, transportations, minor capital, and then a sundry of other small expenses.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
Can the minister explain what the revenue from the criminal property forfeiture unit was over the last several years, going back from 2020, 21, 22, and what that specifically, what the money was allocated towards?
Honourable Minister.
We can provide the member the revenue and some of the expenditures that they went for. I think it's public information. Sometimes we make it public through press release and other sort of mechanisms. It's probably worth pointing out a few of them. I know we've provided some funding to Candace House in Winnipeg, just a great organization. The member knows the history with Wilma Dirksen and Cliff Dirksen, who sadly passed away this past year. Just a wonderful family and an organization and a legacy to their daughter that they've left there. We've seen some money go to the Joy Smith Foundation, who used to sit in this house as a MLA and then, of course, got elected as a federal member of parliament and really made human trafficking her cause, I would say, in a time that many people weren't talking about it. Mr. Chairperson, of course, the Joy Smith Foundation does just tremendous work combating human trafficking in Canada, but there's much more work to do there. But money's been provided to them. Member will also know that there's money that goes to the various police forces, throughout, not just in Winnipeg, although significantly in Winnipeg, but in Brandon and Cornwallis. The Winnipeg Police Service helicopter also received some funding for night vision goggles, I believe. We've seen money go to the Canadian Centre for Child Protection, another great Winnipeg organization, that does really difficult and hard work. But they had the opportunity at our invitation to make a presentation to ministers of justice across Canada a couple of weeks ago. And I said this to them after their presentation, and I said it to the media, I think, after as well. Probably the most impactful presentation, and when I talk about sort of the emotion of a presentation and what they're seeing coming out of the pandemic on online exploitation. And they do really, really good work in a very, very difficult environment. So funding has gone to them. Worth noting that money has gone to combat catalytic converter theft. And I know the member hasn't had the chance to ask this in question period, though I suspect she will in the next week or two, about the state of catalytic converter theft, because her colleague from Elmwood has made sort of a significant issue about this. And at one point, I think, before the House rose in June of this year, the member for Elmwood had sort of hung up the Mission Impossible sign and said that it would be impossible to reduce catalytic converter theft in Manitoba, and was really quite critical of the government. And I don't take these things personally because, I don't like to internalize that sort of hurt. But I do know, he was very, very concerned about catalytic converter theft and didn't think that it could be brought down at all. And in combination with the Winnipeg Police Service, who made a significant a bust when it comes to the sale of catalytic converters, and in combination with Winnipeg Crime Stoppers, who brought forward an initiative on VIN engraving and working with RCMP across Manitoba. There was really an education through Manitoba Public Insurance. It was really a collective effort. And we've seen significant reductions in catalytic converter theft. I'd say 90% reductions. I'll save some of the details for when the member asks us in question period, because I know this is such an important issue to the NDP that they won't let the session go without asking this question. But a 90% reduction in catalytic converter thefts. Now, let's be clear, nobody's hanging up, Mr. Chairperson, the mission accomplished sign while the member for Elmwood hung up the mission impossible sign. We also know that at any given time, the nature of theft is things could change. But it is also important, even when we recognize that when important and good things happen, we should also celebrate that, because there have been so many individuals who've been spared the victimization of theft off of their vehicle, whether they were leaving a movie theater or a house of worship or whatever it was that they were leaving, which was tremendous frustration for individuals. So much more work to do there, of course, but that's an example of where the money for the Criminal Property Forfeiture Fund is going. I could list off many more examples, but I recognize I'm probably running short of time on this particular answer. But I look forward in question period to the member probing more on what's been done on catalytic converter theft in the province of Manitoba.
Member for St. John's.
How much of the property that was seized, and again, I'm asking for the 2020, 2021, 2021/22, how much fiscal years, how much of the property seized was donated? And then who decides where this goes? And then were there property that was destroyed, and how much does it cost to have this destroyed?
The Honourable Minister.
So we'll endeavour to get answers where those answers are available. In terms of donated property, and again, we'll get the specifics on how much property has been donated. I know of one example that I can think of in Brandon, the Crime Stoppers program in Brandon. I was there visiting the Brandon Police, and their Chief Wayne Balkan doing a great job in Brandon, and Crime Stoppers brought out a truck that was decoed out with their Crime Stoppers logo and such. And on the back of the window, and it probably was from a couple years ago, on the back of the window it said that truck had been donated essentially by criminals who had the truck seized, and it was actually very unique, and I thought interesting way to advertise this criminal property forfeiture fund, but then also to act as a deterrent, one would hope, for those who might be looking to commit a different crime. So that was one example where a vehicle was donated. I'm sure there are other examples of equipment or other things that are donated, and then things that are destroyed. No question. I imagine, not to speculate too much, but I'm sure there are things that are seized that are illegal, or weapons, or those sort of things that need to be destroyed in a way that's appropriate. But really want to highlight the great work done by the criminal property forfeiture folks and their director, and I think that more can be done there. We've talked about money laundering, which often doesn't get the attention it deserves, but the Cullen Commission, not to be confused with our esteemed Deputy Premier, but the Cullen Commission in British Columbia looked at the whole issue of money laundering. And of course, it's different in British Columbia than it is in Manitoba, in the way that, auto theft is an example. I remember in the 1990s hearing about auto theft in Winnipeg, which was more joyriding, as opposed to in British Columbia, which was more individuals stealing vehicles and stripping them down, and then selling off the parts or selling off the vehicles. So the crime can be the same, but maybe the rationale and the way it happens is different. So money laundering in the province of Manitoba wouldn't look exactly the same as it does in British Columbia, but it wouldn't be insignificant. And we don't know exactly the depth of it, but it's one of the reasons that the province has looked to hire 2 additional investigators on money laundering to ensure that we're finding out where those funds are, maybe the depth of it. Also looking at unexplained wealth, which is something that the Cullen Commission specifically referenced, that should be looked at and highlighted Manitoba's legislation on going after unexplained wealth for individuals, because it manifests itself in different ways. When an individual, is not declaring any sort of income, and there's suspicion of criminal activity, and they own 7 houses, it does cause questions. And the ability to answer those questions is important as well. So I really have grown to appreciate, although I appreciated it before I was Minister of Justice, but I've really grown to appreciate the work of the Criminal Property Forfeiture Fund.
Member for St. John's.
I've introduced, maybe a couple of times now, certainly one time, changes to the criminal property forfeiture that would see those dollars only go to those that are, trying to help address and prevent certain things, like some of the things that the minister had previously mentioned, but certainly organizations and community-based organizations that are working with victims. And so that those criminal property forfeiture dollars wouldn't go to policing institutions, which already have a significant budget to be able to get those additional things that I know a couple of years back they got new vests. I know many years ago they got, when tasers came on, some of the criminal property forfeiture dollars went towards getting tasers for the WPS. So why does the Department of Justice not prioritize or just stop altogether giving those criminal property forfeiture dollars to different policing institutions, and just not rather just give them to community organizations that are specifically working with victims, which is what some of those dollars are supposed to go for?
Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. I think on the one hand, this might be the tale of 2 answers, but I'll start off with the part where I agree with the member opposite. Certainly on the issues of victims, and the Criminal Property Forfeiture Fund does provide funds to victim services in Manitoba and in other ways to those who are victimized. in the province, and that's very important, and that's going to continue in terms of that support. So we're very much aligned in that thought. And then when she mentions community organizations, of course, we've seen community organizations like the Bear Clan in Winnipeg and in Brandon as an example in the past that have received funds from the Criminal Property Forfeiture Fund. They had the opportunity to do a walk with the Bear Clan this summer in Winnipeg, and really impressed, because I think that sometimes people might think of the Bear Clan, well, they might not know exactly what to think of the Bear Clan. Some might think it's something of something akin to a law enforcement organization. Others might not know exactly what it is, the work they do. But what I was really impressed about is not just the community connections, and you could tell that people in the community had a real familiarity with the people in the Bear Clan, but that they were taking food, as an example, directly to individuals on that day that we were walking, and my chief of staff, Marty McNichol, was with us as well. It's a very hot day, and they were bringing water to individuals in the community. So I would agree with the member when she speaks of the need to provide this funding to victim services. 100% aligned with that. I agree with her when she says there's an importance to provide this money to community organizations like, as an example, but not the only example, the Bear Clan. I think that's absolutely appropriate. I get a little concerned when the member talks about not providing funds to the police. And she indicates that the police have lots of money. I suspect that I'm not sure if she's suggesting that we defund some of the police. I'm not so sure that law enforcement or the communities would agree with you that the police are sort of flush with cash, because I know that they have needs as well. And I would sort of point back to the issue of catalytic converter theft. So one of the things that the RCMP in southeastern Manitoba, together with others, recommended that they have VIN engravers that could be provided then to auto shops to, for free, engrave the VIN number of a vehicle onto the catalytic converter. And this wouldn't have been the only reasons the catalytic converter thefts have gone down. Might not even be the primary reason, but it might be a reason. And the member seems to be indicating that those things aren't really important, and that we shouldn't be supporting those sort of things, which is concerning. I also know, as an example, some police agencies, I think, have used the funds for license plate readers, as an example. License plate readers might be considered a luxury for some. I don't know in the community, or maybe perhaps member feels this way. But the number of individuals who have been found, to be carrying drugs or illegal weapons because an automatic license plate reader has identified a vehicle that could be pulled over because the plate was expired, or for whatever other reason, or maybe it was attached to a warrant, is not insignificant. And I know the member opposite is now put on the record that police perhaps get too much money already, and that's a concern for me, and happy to have that debate with her in other places or other forums. But I would say, and I'll continue to say, that the women and men of law enforcement throughout the province of Manitoba do a very difficult job in very stressful environments, and the ability to support them in sometimes small monetary but meaningful ways is important, and it's something that this government will continue to support, even if the member opposite feels that law enforcement have too much money and should be getting less money, or there should be less of law enforcement. Disappointed in the member's comments there on the back part of that question, but I can assure law enforcement we continue to support them, and will continue to use criminal property funds to support them in the future.
Yeah, the honourable member for Notre Dame.
Yeah, go.
Thank you, Minister. I just have a few questions regarding the Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act and the kind of funding and structure that is. I've been having to use this department a lot because of the different kinds of issues that we're having in the constituency of Notre Dame, and I was just wondering, how well is this department funded? And secondly, I just wanted to bring your attention to a Winnipeg Free Press article by Eric Pendera that was published on September 22, 2022, called Whack-a-Mole in the Danger Zone. And in that article, the Winnipeg Fire Prevention Director, he's Scott Wilkinson, the Assistant Fire Chief, he was talking about different kinds of provincial legislation that was really getting in the way of the municipal government in trying to deal with vacant and derelict buildings. And I was just wondering if you could please, take a look at that and try to address those provincial blockages. They were in the Housing and Renewal Corporation Act, the Winnipeg Charter Act, Section 190 and 151, subsection 1D, and the Municipal Act, Section 247.1 and 2, and 233.11. Again, this is about the passage of municipal bylaws that deal with vacant and derelict buildings. This is something that I feel that the new City Council is going to be really trying to address with a zeal to try to deal with these vacant and derelict buildings. And I just want to bring it to your attention that whatever kind of provincial blockages there are in these different kinds of legislation, if you could please have your attention on that and work constructively with the city to help us deal with these vacant and derelict buildings, it would be very much appreciated. But again, my first question was about how does this Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act work in real life? Like how much money is being put into this type of department? And can you try to get it to work better with the City of Winnipeg, whether it's fire prevention services or with Winnipeg Police Services? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Yeah, I thank my friend for raising these concerns on behalf of not just her community, but certainly specifically her community, and then more broadly, the City of Winnipeg. A lot of the acts that she referenced, in fact, all the acts she referenced, I think, aren't actually in the Department of Justice. But I don't want to minimize the question because it's an important question. I know that the Premier met yesterday with Mayor-elect Gillingham, and that there's going to be further conversations between myself and representatives from the city when it comes to these kinds of issues and issues around crime. And I'm sure there'll be further conversations between the Mayor-elect and the Premier in the future. So while the concerns she raises in terms of the acts and whatever inhibitors were raised aren't actually in the Department of Justice, they are an important concern. And I appreciate her raising that with me, and in my discussions with the city, I'll raise those as well for her.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Oh, sorry. And just also, I did write a letter to the minister a few weeks back about the Gang Action Interagency Network regarding a request to allow them into prisons and for maybe a request for a small amount of funding to help them do the work to do gang tattoo removal, especially for prisoners who have tried to indicate they want a new life or are leaving or will soon be leaving prison. I think it's really important. We've been hearing from the community that having these prominent tattoos on your face, on your hands, on your neck is really inhibiting people from being able to leave that life, that gang life. And I would request the minister to take a look at that letter that I wrote to you about this tattoo removal program that the Gang Action Interagency Network with Ryan Beardy and Della Steinke is heading up, and request for you to take a look at that and see if you could consider supporting that worthwhile endeavor. Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Justice.
It's a very good question. It's a thoughtful question, and I remember for years there being concerns about removing tattoos, gang identification. The GAIN program, I think it's the GAIN program that the member is referencing, is the Justice Critic many years ago when I was a much younger parliamentarian. I remember visiting them in one of their earlier meetings and was very, very impressed by the work that they do. So we will take a look at, I think the members raised two issues. One is the accessibility into jails, but the other is potential funding for tattoo removal. And it may be that again, if they're not already applying for funding through the Criminal Property Forfeiture Fund, might very well be eligible through that fund. So we'll take a look at that because there might be funding availability in that way.
The honourable member for
Maples.
Borough, the Maples. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Minister. And I have a question regarding NOVA project. And on page 31 of the estimate book, it says that department spent $87,344 million in 2022-23 and $64,346 million in 2021 and 22 on the acquisition of assets for MPI. The explanatory notes state that this money was for City Place and Project Nova. Can the minister break out how much of this money was for City Place and how much money was for Project Nova?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you for that enthusiastic welcome, Mr. Chairperson. It's a little challenging for us to answer that question because, as the member knows, and I recognize that there's one line in the estimates that's sort of a placeholder for it. MPI usually comes before the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations. I believe that we're going to schedule the MPI Crown Corporation either in December or January, and officials from the department or from MPI would then be there to answer those questions. So I'm not being dismissive of the member's question when it comes to issues around Project Nova, which I know he's got a particular interest in, heard them during question period today. But the details around MPI questions would be better placed at the Crown Corporations Committee, which we'll have within a month or two, I believe.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe Minister, this is in the estimate books. That's why we are asking this question related to Project Nova and to City Place, because we really want to know where this money is spent, how much is money spent on Project Nova and also for the City Place. And we also want to know where the money is spent at the City Place too. So can you please tell us how much money of this was spent on Project Nova?
The Honourable Minister.
Grateful for the member's question, not dismissive of it, is because it is an important question. Lots of questions around Manitoba Public Insurance, other Crown corporations are valuable questions. They're just questions that are better placed at the Crown Corporations Committee, which will be held in the next 2 months, I believe either in December or in January, and Manitoba Public Insurance officials will be there and excited to answer your questions.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a question for the minister about, there used to be there was an anti-gang program, and I understand it was canceled, then it's been set up again. Working out of the ER at HSC, essentially that if an individual showed up at HSC or the ER and they'd been stabbed, or had been that there was an intervention process. So I'm just wondering if the minister can explain, why that program would have been canceled. It was an anti-gang program where people would arrive at HSC and they would have to leave again, but I was just wondering where that program was at and if there'd been any, it'd been reinvested in.
The Honourable Minister.
We'll endeavor to get more information for the member. I know it's an important question. I think sometimes the challenge is, and I faced this when I was a critic some years ago for this department, is that a lot of the operational aspects of it come from policing agencies, and it's not the department necessarily creating or dissolving police operations. But I don't want to say to the member that is what happened, but I'm just saying that most often is what happens, because we don't operate, we don't do police operations. However, we will endeavor to find out, because I think it's an important question that he's raised.
The honourable member for the Maples.
I am giving a time to Mr. Lamont till 12:20 p.m. Then put on the resolutions.
Terrific. Just on a procedural matter, we are supposed to refer to each other by as the member for our whatever constituency name, but that is noted, and the honourable member for St. Boniface does have the floor till 12:20.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the other question I have, and this is, I recognize this is a difficult question, and the minister may have to, I hope he can get back to me on with greater information. It's, well, often we'll hear, I'm just trying to wrap my head around when a Crown has to make a calculation, and again, I don't want to be interfering with Crowns, but so as I understand it right now, Crowns will make a calculation on whether, and should have the discretion on whether to proceed with charges based on whether they think it'll be successful. Are there, and I know that they'll have different things they have to balance, and I don't want to tinker with that, but the one thing I'm wondering is whether it's possible, my concern about it is that whether the Crown thinks they can win a case or not, depending on whether they're going up against a client who, say, has tremendous financial resources, right? So obviously, even Crowns have limited financial resources to deal with. So is it a possibility that if you were going up against, I'm just wondering if that's one of the calculations that Crowns may take into consideration, and whether that, if that is, that there might be some view to ensuring that that's not the case, simply because obviously the law should apply to everybody equally.
The honourable minister.
The answer is no, that's not a consideration.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Could the minister, is there a list of possible things that are taken into consideration if that's not one of them? And
the honourable minister.
Yeah, there's a policy, sort of a charging standard that involves, things like public interest and as the member mentioned, the possibility of the case being successful. So we will provide that to the member. It does bring up a good point. I think sometimes we don't do a good enough job of explaining that and talking about that and what those standards are, because it is independent from the Attorney General, but it's based on a series of considerations, not involving cost, but involving things like likelihood of a success, public interest, and other things. So we'll provide that to the member.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
And just a question around when it comes to, say, in people being interviewed, I know that there are tremendous challenges around say, child witnesses, issues of abuse. Wondering what the and I know there have been steps towards, it was called Snowflake Place, and now is it Nova House that it's called? I'm forgetting the name. Toba Center, yeah. So I'm just wondering, one of the things that was being considered, I understand, was the possibility that witnesses would be able to testify remotely. In that is that envisioned as something that the government is doing in terms of keeping sort of child witnesses safe in some of these very difficult cases?
The Honourable Minister.
It's an important question he raises, and I'm glad you referenced the Toba Center. Just really important work that they do there. But in terms of child's witnesses, there are always different issues, right? I mean, capacity, the ability to provide evidence. Then there's the trauma that can be involved, as the member rightly references. But the decisions in terms of how the trial progresses is generally one that is the discretion of the judge who is running that particular trial. But there are opportunities for, I understand, children to testify from rooms in courthouses across the province, so they're not always having to be in that location. But of course, the trial judge, is usually the individual who makes those sort of decisions.
Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Because I think, I thank the Minister for that, because it is, I believe that in Alberta they've done a system where it's actually possible to testify from a remote location. So essentially that you would have a place like Toba Center, the child would go there. So I guess the last question is it relates a bit to oversight, because I know that with the IIU, and again this is it's a question, the IIU, there were a couple of years where they weren't making reports. I understand that there are some structural changes that are going to be made because individuals were being seconded to the IIU sometimes. But if the Minister can just talk about or how he sees improvements to the IIU and improvement in independent oversight taking place. Because I mean, one of the challenges the IIU, I think, recommended charges in a number of cases against police officers, and they haven't gone anywhere, which is, but that was a Crown decision saying they didn't think that they'd be able to succeed. But if the Minister could just talk a bit about that challenge around the IIU and making sure that we are actually following through on charges if they're warranted when it comes to, like, no one has a problem with a good police officer, but we have to admit that not every police officer is a good police officer, so we have to figure out how to deal with that. I'm just wondering how you see that playing out in terms of improvements to the IIU.
The Honourable Minister.
It's a good question. The member knows that the first I in IIU is independent, and so it does operate independently. Having said that, I mean, I think that some of the changes in terms of who can serve on the IIU and having a bit more distance, obviously, from active officers is important to provide confidence, still recognizing that that individuals have to have the skills to do investigation and receive evidence and process that evidence. It's also important, of course, we have Indigenous leadership and involvement, and we do with the creation of a new position. So I think that can help bring confidence and also a better understanding maybe of why these proceedings are happening the way they are. There are community liaisons, which are, I think, a good improvement to the IIU. But I still recognize that in any IIU proceedings are going to always be particularly emotional and complicated, and almost always dealing with a tragic circumstance, and almost always with a family who's going to feel in some way that a loved one was done harm in a way that they shouldn't have been. And the best that we can, we want to have a structure, although we're not running it, but we have a structure that gives an understanding that there was real consideration, fair consideration, and then try to communicate as best it can why that decision was made in the way that it was. That doesn't mean that people will always be happy with the decision, but we're trying to put those community liaison, Indigenous leadership within it to try to give a greater assurance that even if the outcome isn't what people always want, and that's true in the justice system generally, they don't always get the outcome you want, but that the process was fair and was fulsome.
As previously agreed, we will now put the question on the resolutions. The first resolution before the committee is Resolution 4.2. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $57,941,000 for justice, Crown Law, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.3, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $3,672,000 for Justice, Legislative Council, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? 4, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $230,858,000 for Justice, Correctional Services, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.5, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $76,112,000 for justice, courts, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.6, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $255,903,000 for justice, public safety, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.7, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $2,286,000 for justice, capital assets, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.8, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $87,344,000 for justice, other reporting entities' capital investment, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is item 4.1, subsection A, the minister's salary, contained in resolution 4.1. At this point, we request that all ministerial and opposition staff leave the chamber for the consideration of this last item. The floor is open for questions. The honourable member for the Maples.
I move that line 4.1, bracket A, be amended so that the Minister of Justice salary be reduced to $21,000.
It has been moved by the honourable member for the Maples, seconded by the honourable member.
There's no second.
There is no seconder. Okay, my mistake. That line item 4.1A be amended so that the Minister of Justice salary be reduced to $21,000. The motion is in order. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? The Honourable Minister.
Well, I just want to say that I believe that in my history as a minister, the resolution has always proposed to reduce my salary to $1. So I take this as a great vote of confidence from the opposition that they believe my salary should remain at $21,000. I look forward to future years when it's even higher than that. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Is the committee ready for the question? Shall the motion pass? I hear a no. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
I don't know. That was pretty good work there, Mr. Chair. I think you might have to do it over again.
I think the nays have it. The motion is accordingly defeated. Resolution 4.1, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $61,841,000 for justice, corporate, and strategic services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. This concludes the Department of Justice. Committee recess. Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? The hour being 12:30. Committee rise. Call in the Speaker. The hour being 12:30, this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until Monday at 1:30 p.m. Have a good weekend, everybody.